I'm Rob Clifton, Digital Engineering Manager for Asite based in London. So today I'm just going to run through the Field app. Just starting off, really I'm going to dive straight into it, just starting off with a little bit about how the Field app actually operates and the workflow behind it. So the setup for the app is very straightforward. It's handled through the web version of the system, and it is based upon kind of three key roles involved with that. So to start off with, you will have a field administrator. That will typically be a person who is responsible for the Asite system, for the common data environment if you're managing that, or simply a site manager who is there to set up the Field app for use. The two roles that then interact with the app itself are the field inspector and the field contractor. So the inspector is able to raise the snags in the first place. You'll see me perhaps interchange snags and defects or punch list. I appreciate we have people who use different terminology. So apologies for that. But yeah, you have an inspector who's going to be responsible for raising the snags, and the status associated with that will be status of open, which you are going to see as I come onto that. The workflow then takes you to the field contractor. These are going to be your teams out on site, potentially, who will be responsible for resolving those snags. And that is the status we have placed against that role. And then finally, the workflow returns to the inspector, then verify or reopen that snag if it has not been dealt with satisfactorily. Now, I'm not going to go into how that admin side is done. It's very straightforward. It's simply a matter of adding an email address against any specific role. I'm going to go into the actual live demo, but if there's any questions on that, I can potentially come around to it at the end of the run through. So without further ado, let's move into the live version of the app. So I may be on my computer screen here, but what I'm using is an Android emulator. So essentially this is as if the app is running on a tablet screen. It's worth adding, to install the app onto your device, it's simply downloaded from either the App Store or the Play Store, depending on whether you're iOS or Android, and you log in using the same credentials you would for the rest of the system. So there's no requirement to have any software installed in the background. It's simply downloadable and easy to use straight off the bat. So I'm going to be logging in as this account first. This account is responsible for both the administrator side and the inspector side. So if I log in through here, you're going to see me launch straight into the Field app. Now, there are a few tabs within here that I will mention also. So down the left-hand side, just to show these, we have my actions, files, defects, models, and apps. So it's going to be defects I'm handling today, but the important point about this app is it is directly connected to the web version of Asite, so that if I need to view files out on site, for example, I can simply click through to the files area, and again, you're going to see some of my files starting to appear here as I move through different folders. I can see this information. So you have access to everything else that you would expect and relate to in Asite, but with the added addition of the defects module specifically. So this is obviously the main aspects I'm going to be diving into today. So in terms of the setup, the first thing you're going to see is when I click through into the specific site or project, I should say, is this level, then you will see a setup here of ground floor. Now, where has that come from? So I'm going to firstly just run through how that setup is done, and that is handled through the web version of the app. So the web version is probably something you're familiar with if you use Asite at current. If not, it is simply accessed by going through to asite.com in any web browser you choose. You then have all these tabs across the top. Some of you may have slightly different based on access if you are Asite users. If you have not seen the system before, these relate to the different keys you have access to in the system. So I start my dashboard. As mentioned, everything is related, tied from Android or iOS straight back up to the web version. And you will see one tab here called Field. If I click into this, this is where the direct connection between the online or the web version and the tablet or phone version is connected. So you'll see this ground floor populated here. What I'm going to do is just add in a few new levels to this. So this is about the setup of your site. It's completely down to you. We would expect yourselves to be able to do this. I'm going to run through exactly how it's done now to show you essentially how simple it is, and also setting up the actual locations on the drawing. So We have the top level here, ground floor. What I'm just going to do is add in a new room underneath this. So it's very straightforward. I just right click and then I go to add location and I type in the name of my additional location. Now this might be areas of site, it might be apartments if you're kind of snagging off apartments, it might be kind of you know, electrical circuits, for example. It's completely down to you how you term these, but it's very straightforward. I simply add it in at this level here. Now behind this ground floor that I've set up, I've also added in a drawing to be able to relate against. So what I did previous to this session was to add a drawing here, and what that allows me to do is set out specific areas on that drawing against which I can then locate snags far more quickly. So if I go into the drawing view by clicking on this little location pin at the top here, you are going to see that ground level has a singular drawing tied against it, and I've just highlighted the whole kind of floor area that relates to that ground floor. Now if I was then to drill down into room 1, and of course you could name that as you wish, you will see that it highlights a specific region of that drawing that's something I've set up previously. The same goes for room 2, and in this case room 3 is something that I have not yet defined. So to define it, it's very straightforward. I have a little pen icon up towards the top right of my screen. I click on this. I'm provided with some options to set up my area, either by square, circle, or polygon, potentially the most useful. I'm just going to do a square here because it's the simplest to do. And I draw my area onto that drawing. Once I click save, you're going to see it's going to save those annotations, and I then have my room 3 layout assigned to that plan drawing. So it's very, very quickly, even if you're talking large numbers of areas to set out, you can very swiftly move through those. At the end of the day, all I'm looking to do here is to quickly identify where specific snags are on a plan, and from there it will take me through pictures or whatever is required to actually locate specifically where the snag is. But this should be a generic high-level location pinning for the snag. So in terms of the setup, to be honest, that's about it. There's not too much more to it. It's very straightforward, it's very simple, so you can do it very, very quickly with no real training. The last thing I will just touch on this is something that we call manage type. So I will drill down into how the snags are raised, but just worth mentioning, the other kind of admin function is this button up here. So we appreciate if you're working in different industries or on different projects, you're going to have different types of snags that you might be raising. So we've exposed this so it is configurable by yourselves to set out essentially the names of the different types of snags. So I've thrown a few in here, just for example cases. And what you will also see is against these, I can assign specific organizations or users. What this allows me to do is essentially assign different organizations or companies here that are responsible for closing out a specific type of snag, for an example, an electrical contractor, so that when I actually raise the snag, there's no requirement to kind of double handle. Essentially, as soon as I select electrical, it's going to automatically populate the assigned organization or individual. And that's something you're going to see once I move back onto the web version of the the tablet version of the app. So these manage types up here. I simply add a new one by clicking on this button. You can see I've deactivated a few here that are no longer in use. Okay, so that's enough of the web version. So let's move back into the tablet view that I had before. And what we're going to see now is if I go back up to the top level here and select my project. Now it's worth adding, I could have multiple projects viewed here if I wanted to. If I select this 2 arrows here, I could view across 2 projects that I was snagging at the same time, or what we term in Asite as workspaces. If I click down into these, ground floor I have here, and I can drill down, and you see that room 3 has now appeared following me adding it to the web version earlier on. So it's all connected. It's worth mentioning this is all happening live, so none of this is me recording on a video. I'm all running through this live on the system as we speak. Okay, so you've seen the breakdown of the list view. Very straightforward to move down through, and against that I can raise a snag, which is straightforward enough. However, we mentioned about being able to specifically pin those snags onto a drawing. So if I go back and click the location icon, located kind of similar in terms of position to where it is on the web version, I can similarly click through, and you'll see it's going to very quickly drive me to those different areas of the app. So very, very fast for me to be able to locate exactly the room that I'm in to be able to then raise a snag against it. So quite straightforward. Once I'm then in that room, I've got two options in terms of raising the snag. I can either do it from the list view, which you may have seen previously. There was a plus button here. I'll just switch back into that. So I have this plus button here. Or from the location view, it's simply a long press. So I'm using my mouse to long press here. You'll see it come up with create defect. Obviously on site, you would be expecting to use a long press with your finger. So once I click create defect, I'm then driven straight into the defect form to be able to begin populating the information related to that snag defect, however you want to term that. So as an example today, I'm just going to pick something straightforward. So let's say I'm actually going to use one you may have seen in there previously. Light fitting, and the issue type I can relate that to, maybe it's mechanical, electrical. Let's pick electrical to start with. Okay, so let's say there's some wiring exposed. Now what you'll note here is the location is pre-populated for me. So there's no need for me to amend this because I've pinned that location specifically against that drawing, and specifically within that area that I've defined, it will automatically locate it for me. If there were no location areas set up on the drawings, I would simply be able to choose from a drop-down list of locations where I wanted to assign that snag. Moving through here, we've got a start date. So I'm just going to pick today's date. And then how many days do I require that to be completed in? So let's be a little bit generous and perhaps say 7 days. Now the assign to is quite key. It's tied to that manage type that I mentioned earlier on. So because I click the electrical type, you're going to see here the assign to are only individuals from the Asite organization. So if I go back to the web version of the app and just kind of correlate that, you can see again electrical here is just users from an Asite organization. If I were to amend this and make it mechanical, which I am going to do, so I scroll up to the top here and amend this to be mechanical, you will see instantly the assign to has been assigned to the person from that organization. So the way we've set up the defect form is to be assigned to a specific account. That is not to say if on site that you had a certain contractor and you didn't want to assign them to specific users within that organization, that they could not just have a generic login to be able to use across that organization so that they can all log in and be able to view the snags that they have necessarily been assigned. It's also worth mentioning I'm in tablet view at the moment here. We do have a phone version of this app, so there's no requirement necessarily to have everybody on site with tablets. Any contractor will be able to, without a phone, and use the app in the same way, just with a slightly different layout. Once I've moved through the text version or the text fields to be entered there, I've got the attachments. So the attachments gives me the ability to attach pictures or documentation. So I'm on my laptop doing this, obviously, so I'm just going to go into camera view, which the quality of this camera naturally is going to be pretty poor. I'm just going to take a picture of the ceiling above me. As you can see, wasn't joking about the quality of that image, but yeah, obviously it's just dependent on what tablet phone you're using. Once I've got that photo, I'll have the option to retake it if there's an issue, or tick and confirm, and what that will allow me to do is to then go into a markup mode. So we're kind of moving through steps of just assign or locating where the snag is. That's really what we're using the pinning for, and what we're using the images for, is to simply state this is where the snag is. We are moving this a step further in our next release to introduce voice notes and video, so that essentially you could snag a whole room against a singular video. But for now, we're working with pictures here. So for example, I can just use a freehand, potentially change the color if I really wanted to. Let's pick something that's maybe a bit more specific. Move into that freehand and just highlight whatever it might be that I have a concern with. And as easy as that, just using your finger, or in my case the mouse, I click save, and it's now going to assign that image against the snag there. So a very, very straightforward process. I can go through and add 10 more images if I really wish to. And once I've assigned that, okay, I've talked you through slowly of the process, but once I've assigned that, I simply click send. And you'll see I'm instantly taken back to the map view or layout view of the of the snags. Now at that point you saw it was blue when it was first loaded in there. The reason we've done that is we want the uploading to occur in the background so you can continue snagging as quickly as you require. So once I've had a first snag pushed in there, I can simply go and snag another location. Excuse me. So now I've got that snag located in the drawing view. I mean, I can alternatively look at other snags by clicking on them and seeing a snapshot of what they relate to. But in this case, I'm actually going to move through into the resolution once we've just had a look at the list view of these. So as mentioned, going back to those statuses I talked about earlier on, you can see we've got two cases here. One light fitting has been verified. These two are open. There's another status which we're going to go into, which is the resolved status. So what I'm going to do now is log out of the app from this side. As I say, this is the inspector kind of view. Well, actually, it's the inspector and the administrator. I'm now going to go into a different view, which will be the contractor. Okay, so I'm just going to use a slightly different email address here. Careful not to reveal my password to everybody, and log in. So all I'm doing now, logging in just through a different account, in this case through the contractor view. So same kind of setup, same widgets that I've got here to break me down into different areas of the platform. If I open up, you'll see that exactly the same. Obviously, I will have different access to files, different actions, and you can see there one task to be completed on the defect side of things. I will just add while I'm in contractor view. I talked about files earlier on. We also have the apps here. These are forms that set out in the system that allow me to raise things like inspections, or in this case an RFI. So I could drill down into here and raise any type of form that I've set up. They work across from the web. I can use them on the tablet view. Okay, you can actually see in the bottom corner now I've received a notification. So we do have push notifications available in this, so when you're out on site, you're not reliant on going into the app to be notified of any snags. They can be automatically pushed through to you. Moving down into the defects, what you can see here is that I've automatically got my incomplete action setters on. I'm just going to switch this off so you can see the list of snags that I have visibility of. Now for those kind of sharp-eyed amongst you, you'd have seen that there was 3 snags previously listed here. Now in this case I've only have visibility of 2. The reason for that is the system is just allowing me visibility to the snags that I've specifically been sent. So we've defined it so it's very clear what your tasks are. From the map view you're still able to see other snags that have the potential to kind of infringe your work. So if I move down into the rooms here, you're going to see on snag view I've got those 3 snags there. Excuse me. And if I click on these, I can still see kind of a quick breakdown. But the main thing is, from my list view, I'm just looking at those that are relevant to myself. I now have 2 options. I can click on the snags from this view, and then on the due days, I can actually move directly into the snag that I dealt with previously. So you can see it's open here, and I've got all the information related to that snag. Just going back, I have the same option from the list view. I simply click on the snag and it's going to take me exactly into the same. So it really depends how you work. If you're someone who works from a tick list essentially, then you work through that. Alternatively, if you wanted to work from location view, then you can go from drawing view. Once I've opened the snag here, I have the image which I can click into very quickly. So I select the image. That's going to open that up and highlight exactly while I'm in the room what is the snag related to. So I'm looking at the ceiling in front of me. I can see, okay, there's a light fitting issue there. So I now, continue to do my work. I resolve the issue. So I have the option to respond directly here. Alternatively, if I was in list view and I know exactly what this is already, then I can very quickly just dive down into it from selecting a drop down on the status here. So in this case, I'm going to click resolved, which is that other status we mentioned. Again, I have the option to add an attachment, perhaps a picture of the resolution. If that's what you've agreed with your inspector, that you can just send across a picture of the completed work, then that will be a useful tool for you. In this case, work has been completed. Excuse me. And what I'm able to do then is to send that off directly back to the inspector, who will then receive a similar notification on their side to handle that and close that out, which is exactly what we're going to move through into now. Now, as a result of that, you've seen that status be updated there, resolved. You've seen it's moved through these color-coded here. Now, obviously, I've only got 3 snags here, but if you've got larger numbers, then it's going to be very, very clear on your different areas of the site, if you wanted to close out a specific region, how many snags you have outstanding. So I've now resolved that. You can see I've got no incomplete actions, so I'm not able to turn that option across. So in this case, what I'm going to go is complete that workflow process, move back in as the inspector, and see how that action has carried across. So again, I'm simply going to log out here. Remove and log back in. So I'm now back in this side of the system, and I can see straight away that that defect is at a resolved state there. I've got a number 1 here, which is highlighting the fact that that resolution now needs to be verified. So I'm going to go through the same procedure. Move down through the different layers. You can see again the incomplete actions is pushing you into that to give you just a view of your specific tasks. So it's defaulting to that view. And there we have the respond action set as per the form that I've defined. So I have 9 days then to verify that. Same breakdown here. You can see these add up into the total for that floor. If I drill down through there, I've got the same graphical view I had previously. And in this case, I can click through. I can see the due dates here, and then I can see the history of what has been handled. So admittedly, I'm using obviously the same name, not to confuse anybody. So the snag was raised by myself. It was also raised by myself, but in the demo account, and you can see there that wording that I placed against the resolution has been carried across, so it's very quick for me. There will be an image there if I wish to tag that in. I'm simply going to say, okay, I've inspected the work, I've looked above me, that light fitting has been fixed. So I can respond and say this has now been verified. So this snag is closed out. And once I've completed that, I then click send, and it's simply going to put that in the list of completed snags. It will shortly turn green. There we go, the green color coming up there. And within that listing, I now have no incomplete actions, so the default switch comes back off, and I can see that listing there, verified and verified. So that snag process that we had is closed out. Of course, I did have the opportunity to change that to open, and that's simply going to turn that back into a cycle of going back to the contractor to deal with that work for it to come back to me to then verify and close out that procedure. Okay. So from here, one thing I just wanted to run through, and probably the last thing to run through really on the tablet or the phone app side of things, is the ability to copy snags. So to speed up this process, we appreciate on site you're going to have kind of many snags that have a similar founding or a similar set of information against those. So how do we speed that up to save you having to enter the same information like I did here for these 2 light fittings? Well, it's very straightforward. From a list view, you can simply slide across. So this is imagining my finger just sliding across the screen here, and you can see that reveals the copy button there. So that will allow me to copy from list view very quickly an electric socket kind of snag. Alternatively, from the view from the tablet view, I've got the same or similar approach. So I can zoom in. Unfortunately, I can't because I don't have 2-finger ability here, just the one. But if I press on one of these snags, let's do the electrical socket, then I've got the ability to copy here. And what I can then do is, you see it goes defect copy, tap location to paste, is pin this location around wherever, let's say, the electrical sockets are missing on this site. So I can pick one socket there, one socket there, for example, and you'll see that that kind of comes up with the dashes to highlight the fact that that's why I'm placing a snag. I can place another one into a location there, for example. And then once I'm happy with that, whether I wish to place one more in a different room, that's fine. Those locations will carry across to represent the fact that they have been moved into a different room. At the point I now tick these, it's going to copy all of those snags. It's going to create them in a list, and you'll see they're going to go that blue color, which we meant previously, means they're in a sync process. So in a short time, you're going to see those turn to red as they are then synced to the cloud. And then obviously the actions that come as a result of those are going to be pushed off to the desired parties accordingly. So there we go, we've had one turn there. So copying is a way that you can very, very quickly snag kind of large areas of your site. So 4 defects correctly, successfully copied, and you can see now, if I go back to the ground floor view, all of these open snags related to the same type of snag there. So those are actions that are assigned as individual forms, because at the end of the day they need to be closed out as individual tasks, but they are still held very quickly in the system, so that I can deal with them in bulk. So that's one approach that was important to show you. The oops, sorry, my app's just closed on me there. Okay. The second I just wanted to run through with you is the ability to be able to use a recent snag as a type of raising them more efficiently. So if I go back into the list view here, if I click this plus button, one option I have at the top here is a recently created defects. So this will allow me to select defects that I've raised previously without the need to populate them again. So you can see those electrical socket ones in different locations raised there. In this case, this light fitting, I can select that again, and this will fill out the form accordingly, and I can relocate it as I mentioned before. So again, a more efficient process to allow you to quickly raise your snags on site, yeah, without needing to duplicate work. So from the tablet view, that's probably shown you how that works. I think it's a fairly straightforward procedure. It's pointless me running through that any further. Worth just mentioning at the top here, you do have the ability to filter your snags. So you could select, for example, different organization or different type. You've got your location set out anyway, but that will allow you a further way of filtering out snags if you have specific areas of the site to go and run through. So moving back to the web version in that case, what I just wanted to demonstrate here is that while I've been working essentially on that tablet that whole time, is the connection, the automatic connection to the rest of the system. So one of the real powers of having the field within Asite is that it is connected to every other aspect of the platform. So if I select field here and I refresh these, all of a sudden you're going to see all these snags simply be loaded in there, and that was simply by me refreshing the page. There's nothing further I needed to do. You can see a breakdown of where those snags have been assigned, and again, if I go into drawing view, then I have the location pins for those snags that I raised and copied accordingly. Of course, you can view them from here as well. We would tend to expect you to drive more so from the tablet, but you have the ability to do so. The last point I just wanted to run through is the reporting side of this. So it's one thing having all this information available to you. The next stage is what can I actually do with it? What can I do with the data that is being produced that I'm entering in as part of this procedure? So we have the reporting module here, which is an extensive aspect of the Asite platform and runs throughout the entire system. So for example, a standard report I would run from the files area would be incomplete tasks on files. So let's say files going through in an approval workflow. So I can run a report on those, but I'm also able to run reports specifically on the field aspects of the module, or I'm able to combine the tasks that have been defined in the field with tasks that have been defined on different aspects. So for example, if there's been forms raised for inspections, for example, I'm able to tie a list of tasks that a subcontractor has to complete, for example, even though they're across different aspects of the system. As an example, what I'm going to do is just run one report that I have available here, which is just a defect report with a summary chart in here. So this can be available as one of our standard reports. I have a few options to run this. I can click the play button and run within the system here, or as I'm going to export this to Excel format so that I'm able to view it on Excel should I wish to then dig down into that any further, and you're going to see all the snags that I've pulled into there appear immediately within my report. So we'll just see if that downloads for me. Okay. So just while that's downloading a second, I'll just show you what the web version of that report looks like as well. So I have the ability to hit the play button here, and you can see the same information then loads up. So you will see those open snags. Who have they been assigned to? So a specific user, in that case the electrical socket is Chris Peters. So those are all open, and I've got a summary chart that is detailed there that enables me, a high level statistic on this type of item. Now, as I mentioned, the strength of the reporting is that you are able to edit these to the nth degree. So I can go into this report, edit this, and I can define such charts for specific contractors, for example. I can define it for specific time frames. So the amount of information is really, really valuable to me. So it allows me to start going into the real data analysis of the snagging. So, for example, how long is it taking me to snag and then close out and verify an apartment, for example? So I know from the point that the construction is completed on that a fair estimate of how long I can expect snagging that kind of typical area. So the information in Asite and the ability to then pull that out and analyze that is also really, really important. It's not just about the process of the field, it's actually about the information following that. Now that brings to an end really the coverage of the field app, the process by raising those snags following the admin, and what you can do with the information after that. So we're now, I see a few questions have come through here. I'm now going to hand back over to Tracy, I believe, who will just handle those questions, which I will pick up accordingly. If you do have any, this is now the time to type them in the question box, and I can answer as they come through. So.
Okay, Rob. So time for Q&A. Right. So we've had some people raise questions during your presentation there. So I'm going to run through I think we've got about 7 or 8 that we're going to go through. So the first question is any data you upload on Field, would it also be available on the Adoddle web browser platform, so on the cloud platform?
Yeah, so defects aside, if you wanted to upload, for example, a file or a document from site, or let's say a scan of a concrete receipt notice or anything like that, goods receipt notice, then you can upload it straight from the Field app, and in the same way the defect forms are pushed straight through to the system, the same will be of any file that you wish to upload. So they are directly connected, plugs right into your CDE, so that you've got access from start to finish, essentially.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, question 2. Can you create more than one defect form type?
Yeah, so you've got multiple different, obviously, the managed type, which allow you to do different types there. At the moment, the specific set out of that form is standardized, but you would be able to pick up a different form type in the future. That is something we are embedding into the field. Of course, you've still got different project forms that you're able to have as part of the application that you can use as well.
All right, thanks for that. Okay, question 3. Can you view 3D models in the Field application?
Okay, so the Field app also has as well. Maybe I just share my screen again here just to run through this. Let me just 2 seconds. I'm just going to pull one up as an example here. So yeah, if I could have the presenter rights back, then we'll be able to. So what I'm just showing here is something on the Models tab, is to be able to load up the models. Now I'm working with a fairly large model here, but I'm just going to show the ability to load this into the system and how that works basically. So Asite has a model server, which we are then able to view IFC models either on the web or in this case on a tablet view. So if you can see my screen here, then I can either drill down into the specific kind of architectural IFC, or I'm able to view the model that I have in front of me. So in this case, you can see here, okay, admittedly I've got it upside down, but I'm able to move this model around within a tablet view. Again, no plugins required. So if you are out on site and you want to advise members of your team, for example, what the finished article is to look like for a certain area of the site, then you are able to use the models aspect of the Field app to then go through that. As mentioned, you can drill down into the model if you need to. It's obviously a bit trickier here because I only have the singular one click essentially, or one finger, to be able to move around, but zoom is done with a pinch the same way you would zoom into a 2D file. So that is something of a real strength there.
Right, okay. The next question, Rob. Working offline, is it possible in the Field app?
Okay, so working offline, I'm just going to also run through this here. It's very straightforward. You can simply long press on any, let me just move that up top there, you can simply long press on any version of the or any level of the site, and that will allow you to sync down a specific location, so that if you are on site and you do not have any ability or access to internet, you can continue snagging. What happens is that you end up with these, all the snags have the blue icon, and as soon as you hit internet, there's no manual intervention required. As soon as you hit the internet, all of those snags are going to be automatically pushed back up into the system and synced with the actions assigned to the users accordingly. So yes, it will comfortably work offline in any environment.
Superb, thanks. Okay, next question. Can you take photos from your device gallery and add them to the Field app?
Okay, so photos from your device gallery, you can indeed. It does depend on what obviously device you've got, but Android I know I use, and that's absolutely fine. So as part of your files area, you have your photos that you've taken there, and so being able to use those is no trouble at all. So it's not like you need to take a new photo. If you've already snagged the site using photographs, you can just assign those to the snags that you're wishing to raise.
And then on the back of that question, can you also select multiple photos and upload at the same time?
So because we have the ability to mark up the photos embedded, and we view the photographs as a means of kind of locating more specifically where the snag is. At the moment, it's a singular photo at once. Now, what we are moving towards, as mentioned in one of our releases by the end of this year, is to be able to video snag. So instead of you having to raise a picture and then mark that up and then another picture, as you mentioned, then you can simply video the location or video the room and pick up multiple snags and assign that against the defect form. We're also, as mentioned, in addition to that, adding voice notes. So it's up to you really, but we think those approaches will be more beneficial than having multiple photos.
Thanks. And the next question is, do all levels of the users have the ability to comment on defects, or is it just the admin user?
Okay. So in terms of commenting, I don't know if that's referring to being able to kind of resolve. So it's all related to the access you have within the system. So if I just go into the web view and just explain a little bit more about how the roles are defined. So this was something I was going to go into. It's something earlier on I talked about instead, but I'll just show you here within the role setup, the admin area of the system. This is much the same as excuse me, this is much the same as the rest of the platform. So I simply have those 3 defined roles within my system here. So you'll see them: field administrator, field contractor, and field inspector. And once I've assigned a user to one of those levels, they have the access accordingly. So if I did only want someone as view only on the defects, that is a possibility. It's something we can kind of set as a new role, but the main roles are just driven from here. So if I add a user into one of these, they will have the ability to resolve snags that they are assigned. You are not able to resolve a snag that you are not specifically assigned.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. Okay, so the next question is, can you see an audit trail of all the defect status changes?
Yes, you can indeed. There's 2 approaches to doing that. So I'm going to go into the web view just to demonstrate that. So for example, this snag here that I've got that is verified, if I click on this snag, then and scroll down, you can see the history within the defect form itself. So you've got one approach here to viewing the process of the snags being closed out through the defect form. Alternatively, online, if I go into one of the snags, you have the same in-depth auditability against every type of snag from here. So again, I can click the same approach, go history, and view exactly the same type of information. So around the snagging, yes, that's all held in the system as per the rest of the platform.
Thanks. Okay, and then the next question is, can you run reports across a number of projects at one time and collaborate all the information for, say, a snagging report, like a general snagging report over your portfolio of projects?
Okay, that's a great question. So yeah, you can indeed. So at the moment, I've only got a singular project selected from my drop down here. And when I say project, I also some of you will have heard me refer to them as workspaces. So they are areas in which I have located the snags. And what I'm able to do is select multiple of these. In my case, I maybe have 2,000 projects in here across everything that I manage. And what I'm able to do is select one or more of these and run the same reports across all of those at once. Now, just in addition to that, the reporting is very much, in this sense, a reactive approach to it. I'm going into the reporting and looking for the information that I want because I decided that I want it. The approach we're trying to push our clients towards is more one of being proactive and saying, well, I know I'm going to need this information. I know I'm going to need, defect snag lists. I know I'm going to want to provide an Excel list to my subcontractor because he's not going to log in to the app and see those. So what you are able to do is edit and schedule these. So what that means is you can set up these reports to simply be emailed to an email address attached to those emails, so that there's never a requirement to actually go in and specifically run them. You can simply have them delivered to you, so at the start of each day, each week, you've got that information across one or many projects delivered right in front of you.
Okay, so the next question is, when a contractor resolves a situation, can you show how he or she attaches a picture of a resolved issue? Okay, in other words, so once you've raised the snag, I'm guessing, can the contractor then respond with a picture or an image file?
Yeah, I can indeed. So if I move down here, and I'll have to raise a snag briefly before I do that. So let's select, unfortunately I don't have the login to the ones that I've got that are open. So if I create a new snag, let's say in room 2, what I can then do is go through the process of how that resolution is done. So again, I'm just going to pick light broken, because it's the best thing I can take a picture of in front of me. I'll pick finishes in this case. That will automatically assign it. Example, start date here, and a number of due dates, so 2. I'm not going to necessarily attach a picture from this side. What I'll do is I'll do the resolve side and just show how that works. So I'm just going to wait for that to sync up before I log out, but you can see it's blue there. It's then form created successfully. So I can now switch views. And then run through the same procedure here. So I have one incomplete action that's sent, so you can see that light broken. It's also worth adding that that snag from previously, I've been sent for information, the fact that that has been verified now. So in this case, I can go through, I can view the snag. When I respond, same procedure, I attach from the camera. So again, maybe let's just top of my head there. Take a picture there. It's exactly the same procedure as it is when you are raising the snag initially, and you can either mark it up, or in this case I can just save it as it is, and that's going to attach that against my resolution and say see attached. What's then worth adding, of course, is that that is pushed back straight to the web version of the system, so that there's no requirement necessarily for the inspector to go out on site and confirm that. You can see that that task is now moved to resolved, and if I go to the web version of the app here, I can see that that light broken has been resolved, and I can see the attachment in front of me there, and fractions of a second later, it's right in front of me to be able to open up. It's probably just still processing that image in the background there, but I'm able to open that up and view that picture that I've just taken straight on my web screen. Again, it looks perhaps a little bit because I'm working on exactly the same computer screen, but it wouldn't matter whether this Android view I have here is a phone, is a tablet, or is my laptop. The connection is all happening through the cloud. There's nothing wired here that is causing it to push straight across. It's this fast moving from different devices. It's one of the beauties of cloud, I suppose.
Awesome,
okay.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so the next question is, can you upload health and safety forms or say quality assurance forms which have multiple tasks behind them and need to be signed off in order for the task to be completed?
Okay, so the forms within the app, there is the ability to do this. So I'm going to come out of my contractor view and just raise, as an example, an RFI form through the app version of the system. So let's place one in here. So the first thing is I've got to set up the form to work in the specific environment. So we have currently forms that we're working on Microsoft InfoPath, so you were able to create your own form, build your own form, and put those into the system so that they could work, and you could raise something like an RFI, which I'm going to do here, straight from tablet view. So if I go down into the forms here, and you'll see a request for information. Now we have a very exciting addition in our next release. I won't reveal it through this webinar, but it's really going to expand out how this form builder is also going to be built on. So I can drill down into the RFI as an example. This is one form I have here, and I can click this plus button and raise a form directly from the tablet without the requirements to connect this to the system. So I can open up the form here, and you can see I'm straight into a editable form that I can type the fields in, and again connected directly to the web version. So I can say, let's just call this one webinar demo question, how do forms connect, and assign a distribution there if I wanted to. So I can select a specific user, for example that dummy account that I've created in there, and once I've added that user, I'm assigning it in this case for information. I can close that and send that RFI. Now that's going to push through, again, even though I'm running on the same machine, it's directly connected to the system. So if I was in the forms area and this was a health and safety form opposed to it being an RFI, that connection still exists. So you can see that RFI is already in front of me before I've even managed to switch tabs. And the flexibility is obviously huge with this. So any form that you require, you can build yourself within here and set them up so that you have access to your full health and safety set of forms within kind of a paperless environment. So there's no risk of you losing any handover information here. It is all available directly for you.
And the next question is, can you assign a form to a specific location? For instance, on the map that you were showing us earlier there with the tags for a particular room, can you assign a form to that specific location?
So at the moment, the defect view is just for defects. So the ability to do that location pinning, we appreciate has value in other types of forms, health and safety kind of hazard cards, for example, and that is something we are introducing by the end of the year. So at current, it's just the defects that can be pinned, but the ability to do the same approach with other forms is coming very, very shortly indeed.
And then I'm guessing, because there's a question here saying, could you issue a non-compliance form? So I'm guessing because you're creating forms on the fly, that this would be possible, right?
Of course, yeah. So as mentioned, the flexibility to build your own forms allows you to build in an NCR into the system and be able to raise that and have a workflow pushed straight from the app. So again, the same procedure I did in raising that RFI, I could use exactly the same approach, just be an NCR and assign it to a different person to perform a different task, for example.
Thanks. I'm going to pass to Annie now to close out the session for us. Any questions that we didn't have time to answer today, we will answer in personal emails back to the guests, and there will be a recording available of today's session. So I'm going to pass over to Annie now.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Rob. That was very interesting, and I can see how contractors would gain value in implementing a tool like Field App for on-site operations. As Tracy said, if there were any questions that were not answered today, we will respond via email to all of our guests. And if anybody missed out or your connection tuned out for a second, we will have a recording sent out. Okay, thank you for your time and interest, everyone. Be sure to tune in for our next webinar. It's going to be taking place on the 25th of October. And for that webinar, we will be demonstrating our information delivery plan module. Don't forget to send any suggestions, or if you have any further questions regarding the platform, please email us at support@asite.com. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.